Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mikey McNuggets, Jason Lloyd coming at you for another edition of the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. Jason, the NBA draft tips off tonight. We're going to talk about the Cavs' second-round prospects that I like later on UCSS. So we had two other topics to discuss, but I'm going to make a little change up on the fly here because there's something that happened yesterday in the NBA world that then took over Cavs Twitter that I wanted to address this morning, and that is the Celtics dumping a ton of salary in Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis to get under the second apron. Now, we can talk about those moves in a second, but the reaction to those moves from a lot of Cavs fans online was, see, the second apron's not the boogeyman. Look what Boston just did. They were able to avoid the second apron. They were able to dip under it with relative ease. It took them all of 24 hours to go from a team severely in the second apron to a team under the second apron. It's worth mentioning the Celtics saved $210 million in luxury tax money alone by making those two moves yesterday, trading Jrue Holiday to Portland and trading Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks. But Jason, I have some strong thoughts on this, but I want to let you go first. Does what Boston did yesterday change in any way, in any capacity, how you believe the second apron will impact what Cleveland does this summer?
No, because they're in a totally different spot. Boston is, and first of all, they've been a tax team for a while now, which adds to the complications. They won their championship first and foremost, and we knew they were going to do this. Like, they pretty much announced it. We knew going back to last year, when some of those extensions were signed, what was coming down the road. So this wasn't really a surprise. I'm not entirely convinced they're done. Why do we think they're done? Like, have they come out and said they're done? At this point, why not just go all the way under the tax? I don't know if there's a way to do that, but they need to sort of reset their tax clock. And so I'm not totally sure that they're done making moves and cutting salary. But the Cavs have not even been a tax-paying team one time yet. They will be next year. So they knew this was coming. Again, I've said this before, but I don't know why suddenly people are acting like they need to get out of the second apron. The Cavs, when they traded for DeAndre Hunter, knew they were going to be a second apron team next year, and they were okay with that. So, yeah, it was a disappointing end of the season, but I think they still really like their roster and still really like where they're headed. So it's okay. You can be a second apron team for a short amount of time. You can't be a second apron team too many years in a row. You can do it 2 years. You can be a second apron team for 2 years in a row. You can't be one for 3 years, which is why what you saw happen in Boston yesterday is what the Cavs are headed for in maybe 2 more summers, but not right now.
Yeah, that third year is when the future draft pick gets frozen, and that creates a whole different level of complexity in terms of roster building. But I think the part that everybody is missing, and I know you and I have said this on numerous occasions, Jason, the second apron, it isn't the boogeyman. It's not a roadblock. It's an obstacle, right? Like, if there's a fallen tree in the road, you can go around it by taking a detour, make a right, make a left, make another left, and you get around the tree. It doesn't mean the entire road shut down. It just makes it more difficult to get to your end destination. And in this case, the Celtics' end destination was to get under not only the second apron, but probably under the luxury tax in general. Why? Because Jason Tatum, their best player, their superstar, is going to miss most of, if not the entire season. So it makes no sense to be a second apron team for the third consecutive season, to lose a future draft pick when you're entering the season without your best player, a top 10 guy in the league. If the Cavs were so desperate to get under the second apron for the sake of getting under the second apron, there are a million moves to be made, Jason. They could dump Jared Allen to Houston for Jack Landale. Right? Like, that saves them $9 million. They could trade Darius Garland to Portland for Anthony Simons in 2 seconds, basically what Boston did yesterday with Jrue Holiday. They could get under the second apron, but it's all about what are you trying to accomplish. The Celtics turned Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, two of the key players in their championship team, right, into Anthony Simons, who, just trust me on this one, Portland was very, very okay getting off of his contract. I know he's an expiring, but they're very happy with getting Jrue Holiday back for that. They turned Kristaps Porzingis into George Niang, who Cavaliers fans said couldn't play in a playoff series. So let's not pretend Boston got better. Right. Boston dipped under the tax and got severely worse than they were 24 hours ago. If the Cavs want to get severely worse and get under the second apron of the luxury tax, they could easily do it. But the Cavs and the Celtics right now have different end goals. The Celtics are not trying to win a championship next year. I should rephrase that. The Celtics are more concerned with getting under the luxury tax, and understanding their circumstances without Tatum. And they're saying, okay, maybe we do need to take a year off before we're back in that hunt. While the Cavs are looking at the East as wide open as ever, saying, no, we are very much in the thick of it. So they have two different end goals. The Cavs, if they find the right deal for Jared Allen, for Darius, for whoever, whether it's a first apron, a second apron, a third apron, a fourth apron, a fifth apron, a sixth apron, they'll go make that move. It's more difficult to line up the financial side of things, but it is not impossible. But I see people all over social media yesterday saying, look what the Celtics did. The second apron, it's just a myth. No, it's not just a myth. It does legitimately impact the moves you can and can't make. It doesn't stop you from making certain moves. It just makes it a little more difficult to maneuver and get the financials in place. But Boston made a very clear statement yesterday. We're okay taking a step back next season to realign our book so that we can make another push for it later when Tatum's healthy and Brown's still in the prime of his career with those two as our core. The Cavs are trying to win now. It makes no sense for the Cavs to do something like Boston did just to avoid the second apron. They are two completely different situations, Jason.
Yeah, I wasn't on social media last night to gauge any sort of Cavs fan reaction. That's silly if people were saying that. The thing with the second apron, we've talked about this before, you can't have massive holes on your roster and be in the second apron and have any sort of levers or tools to then go patch those holes. Like, that's the thing Phoenix found out the hard way. And people kept sort of saying that about them, was like, they are not a team that belongs in the second apron, because they were very top heavy and they had a lot of holes on that roster. When you enter that high of a tax bracket, you have to have a whole roster. You can't have any glaring holes. And I know what the narrative is and what the discourse is around the Cavs right now, but they feel like they have a roster that is complete and can compete for a championship. And that's not to say they're not going to make any moves between now and the start of the season. But if they have to roll this team out there, I think they look across the board and say, we don't have any glaring deficiencies, which is why they felt comfortable making the Hunter move, which is why they felt comfortable going into the second apron and sort of starting all of these clocks that we're talking about, because they felt like that was the last big move. You can add minimum guys, but you're not going to have the tools at your disposal to go make big trades, to go sign mid-level exception type players who can come in and help you right away. So that's sort of the big restraints that come with that. And they feel like they're in a good spot. And again, not to say they can't make any moves between now and then, but if they have to roll this team out in October, I think they'd feel pretty comfortable with that. And I'm sort of baking into the cake here a Ty Jerome extension to where he comes back. And if they do that, I think they feel like they're in a good spot with where they're at on the roster.
Yeah, I'll say it one more time, then we'll move on. It is a road. It's an obstacle, not a roadblock. You can make moves. If the Cavs find a move they love that they think makes their team better, they will find the necessary means to make that move happen. Whether it's shedding salary prior, which I think they're finding out a little harder than it may seem. The Nets were the recipient yesterday in that 3-team Porzingis trade, Jason. They got a first-round pick, the number 22 pick in this year's draft from Atlanta, for taking on Terrence Mann.
Yeah.
And I think right now, if you were to ask 30 NBA teams, would you rather have Terrence Mann, Okoro, or Wade? I don't know what the exact number would be, but I feel like Terrence Mann's the best of those three players. Now, he makes more money. Granted, it was a 3-year, $47 million contract as opposed to 3 for 33 for Okoro, and Dean Wade has a $6.5 million option this year. So it's more money, but the going price to take on that contract is a first-round pick. Cavs don't have a first-round pick to attach to an Isaac, to a Wade. So it's not necessarily simple, but there are ways for the Cavs to make moves if they so choose. I just wanted to point out what Boston is doing is not compatible to what Cleveland is trying to accomplish. Cleveland is trying to go all in and win a championship next year. Boston is clearly telling you this team we had without Tatum healthy is not going to win. So instead of trying to pay this exuberant luxury tax, lose future draft picks. Let's get under the second apron. Let's get under the luxury tax and reset our clocks. They're not apples to apples, and I just wanted to point that out. The second apron is not the end-all be-all. It is not the boogeyman. You can make moves as a second apron team. It's just more difficult, and there are more financial complications involved than simply saying, let's trade player X for player Y.
Yeah, the Celtics are about 9 exits up the highway from where the Cavs are. And so you can't compare where the two franchises are at because they are in different stages of life here. And again, even if JT was healthy, I think they would have done this. They had to do this.
Yeah.
And that's why
it just makes it easier with him being out, knowing that you're missing the top 5 guy in the league, top 6 guy in the league for the majority, if not all of next season.
And I don't think they're done. I think that they're going to keep cutting. If I were them, I'm trying to get out of the tax entirely at this point.
I don't disagree. All right, Jason, time for our first break in today's show. Let's talk about Buckeye State Credit Union for a sec. If you haven't heard of them, meet your new favorite financial partner. Buckeye State Credit Union is a local institution offering everything from checking accounts to home equity lines of credit and auto loan with some of the lowest rates in Northeast Ohio. Their Cleveland branch is in Shaker Heights, which is one of 5 locations across the state, making it easy to find one near you. If you can't get to a branch, no problem. They make banking simple with digital banking. What sets them apart? Well, they make banking personal and convenient at Buckeye. Their focus is you. Their core values: connect, simplify, adapt, guide everything they do, bringing people together, cutting through the clutter, and they're innovative. To learn more, visit buckeyecu.org. Buckeye State Credit Union, your money simplified. Jason, we just talked about Darius Garland in a roundabout way, but I had a question about Darius. I was talking to a buddy of mine over the weekend, and he asked me, hey, Mike, do you think Darius could ever become passable defensively in the playoffs, a la Tyrese Halliburton? Now, Halliburton, prior to the injury, and hopefully he makes a speedy recovery as well, is by no means a very good defender, but he's passable, right? And in the playoffs, sometimes passable is all you need to be able to hide, shield, and protect a key offensive cog. So, Jason, I'm curious from your opinion. Do you think DG can become a passable defender in a playoff series?
I think anybody can. And maybe that's a cop-out, but you talk to enough people in the NBA. I mean, even at the youth levels, defense is about effort. And I know it comes down to what you're asking them to do on the offensive end. There's only so much gas in the tank, and it comes down to what a team is asking you to do on one end of the floor, and then how much you have left for the other end. And I'll go back to the Warriors, and people got so angry, but it's true. They would just hide Steph on the defensive end as much as they could because of what type of load they ask him to carry on the offensive end. Steph is never a great defender. And so, the Cavs would always try and hunt him out and find ways to put him in pick and rolls and make him guard and all that. So yeah, absolutely. I think Darius could become a better defender. You can't do anything about your size. You are what you are. You're 6 feet. You're not going to suddenly stretch 5 or 6 inches overnight. For me, it really comes down to just don't get blown by, man. Just don't get beat off the dribble consistently. Don't put your team in bad spots time after time after time down the floor. Be a good team defender. Be a good help defender. We saw it. I'll go back to the Celtics game where you and I sat together and he took the brunt of it with Tatum on the switches with Boston.
Did a great job with it.
Yeah. Now, to do that night after night after night in a playoff series, it's going to wear him down. Again, you can't do anything about the size. So I think that there's some nuance to this in terms of what are you asking him to do on the defensive end specifically, but to generically say, can he become a better defender? Can he be passable on the defensive end? I absolutely believe every player in the NBA can be a passable defender in the NBA if they choose to be.
Sometimes I let you go first, then I get mad at myself for letting you go first because you take all the right answers. The answer is 1,000% yes. Because, as you mentioned, defense is 95% effort and 5% physical. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, defense is so much more of a mental thing than it is a physical thing. Because effort plays a huge role in it. During the regular season, there are reasons why guys like, we'll use Andrew Nembhard for an example, he's a solid defender in the regular season. When the postseason comes, he locks in effort goes way up and he becomes one of the best defenders. Completely took Jalen Brunson out of his game. Nobody takes Jalen Brunson out of his game. Why?
Yeah.
Because the intensity's ramped. Aaron Nesmith in the same capacity. What we saw him do on multiple occasions to Donovan and some of the Cavs when they play, and even in the finals, the way they guarded SGA and Jalen Wood, it's all about effort and mentally being in the right place at the right time. I'm going to speak real quick. Somewhere, not in this room, but back in my room in New Jersey, I have a defensive player of the week from a Jim Calhoun UConn team camp. This is probably 2007. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I'm a short, unathletic white kid, but I'm a hell of a communicator. That's why I do what I do now. And I knew where to be in help position. Like that, I was very good at being the help side guy. I used to get blown by all the time. So you know what I would do? I'd give dudes extra steps. You can't shoot when you're a sophomore in high school, so I didn't get burned like that like you could in the NBA, but I was constantly communicating, calling out screens, and I knew where to be on the help side. Darius will never be an elite on-ball defender. That's just not part of his capacity. But if he increases his effort and he gets a little stronger, which I'm hoping this toe injury gives him some time to be off his feet and put on some upper body strength, he can be a guy that can at least force some resistance, giving the help defense an extra half step to get into the driving lanes and force the offensive player to then react to the help. When you get blown by immediately, then the defense is simply reacting to the offensive. All you got to do is give him a half bump, a half step, make him take one extra half dribble or one extra hesitation so that the help has time to get in position. And then the driver is now reacting to where the help is as opposed to vice versa. It's all about smarts. It's all about effort. Being stronger certainly helps. But yeah, he can become a passable defender. I mean, look at some of the other guys in the playoff that played major minutes. Halliburton's not a great defender. He's not. He's passable, not a great defender. Everyone on OKC can defend. Every single person on OKC can defend. But a guy like Mike Conley, for example, at this point when he's 41, it's not much of a defender. But throughout the course of Mike Conley's career, he's 6'1", $180, Jason, if that. He's a pretty good defender for most of his career. Played with those grit and grind Grizzlies teams. He's been on a bunch of different circumstances where he wasn't surrounded by elite defensive talent. And if the point guard in that situation is just a turnstile, it doesn't end up working out. But I think Darius could be that level of defender. He's never going to be a shutdown guy. But I do think passable is absolutely a level he can reach with a little more effort, a little more buy-in, and a little more physical strength next season.
I'm with you.
Cool. Let's get to our last read of the day here, Jason. It's from Monarch Money. Have you ever wished managing your money was easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings, planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track your accounts, investments, and spendings in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Jason, real quick, we'll do this one in 5 minutes. We saw a bunch of different players on Indiana become playoff risers, elevated their game to the next level when the lights got brighter. Nembhard, Nesmith, Toppin, McConnell, just to name a few. The Cavs, on the other hand, in their playoff run, we did not see many guys step up in ways that was above their regular season production. So let's look at the non-key guys on this team. The Jalen Tysons, the Max Struces. I know Merrill's not still there. The Jerome could be back. But who on the Cavs bench do you think has the characteristics of what makes a potential playoff riser? We don't have any proof yet that they can or can't be, but who do you think has some of the characteristics built into their DNA that maybe could be one day?
Strus is the first one that comes to mind for me, just because, and I know people want to kill him for the last game, and he was terrible in the last game. There's no way around that. But you can't look at one game and take away from everything else that he did. I think Max is the guy that you got to have sort of that low heart rate in these situations, and guys who don't get overwhelmed by the moment. And, you mentioned Nembhard. I was looking up some of his numbers, regular season and postseason. It's incredible. Like, he's a 30% shooter in the regular season from three, and he's over 40% in the playoffs. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where, you don't know until you know. We've talked about that before on the show about different characteristics in guys and different traits, particularly with football. And sometimes you don't know until you get them in the building, and then it's too late, one way or the other. If a guy's got that dog in him or not. And there's ways to know when you're scouting guys. You talk to their college coaches. I know teams go on campus and talk to people on campus who know these guys, but you don't really know for yourself until you get them in the building. A lot of times, who they are in pressure moments. And Max is the first one that comes to mind for me. I don't think Jarrett is in that conversation. I don't think he'll ever be in that conversation. This is 3 years in a row where I feel like he's sort of let them down in the playoffs, going back to the Knicks. And then last year with the rib thing. And now this year, he was a ghost in the series against in the last couple of games against the Pacers. So, I just think that's it. That is who he is. And we have enough evidence now. But again, you didn't know that before you saw it. So with some of these guys, I think it's hard to know who's going to emerge and who's not. Obi Toppin's a guy that he's a good prospect coming out. The Cavs were, what's that?
Top 10 pick.
Well, the Cavs were linked to him quite a bit in the pre-draft process the year they took Okoro, and athletic guy, can jump out of the gym. But he's a guy that really sort of, to me, emerged in this postseason is a key foundational piece. But then when next regular season rolls around, is he a guy you're going to be talking about? No. But also, I think some of this is matchup based and who matches up well against and in certain teams and who doesn't. We've talked about that before. But the one name that comes to mind on this roster when you talk about that is Max. And I don't know that I can give you a second name. The thing with Ty is I just think you can only ask guys to do what they're capable of doing. And I think the Cavs got in a position where they were asking him to do a little bit too much. And I think he brought it on himself to where he wanted to try and do more, and he got exposed a little bit. So you sort of, if you stay in your box and you stay within what you're capable of doing, you can succeed. But
it's kind of like McConnell when Halliburton went down on
Sunday
night, and all of a sudden they needed him, and he played a good game. Like he scored, but he had 7 turnovers, and it was like, okay, maybe we should shut down. Could TJ McConnell be the white Jalen Brunson on a bad team if he needed to be? But
that's exactly right. And that was Delly here. Matthew Dellavedova, when he was here, filled a great role as a catch and shoot 3 guy. Milwaukee gives him a big contract, and he just completely got exposed as to who and what he is. So not to pick on undersized white point guards, but that's basically what we just did.
I'm gonna give you a different name, Jason. And Jerome's not undersized, and he's mixed. So
no, you're right.
He's out of that category. But I'm gonna give you a name that I'm not even 100% sure he's a regular season guy, but I think he could be a playoff riser because he has the characteristics and the mold of what I think you need to have in a playoff riser. Before I give you that name, when you kind of strip down what all the Indiana guys had in common, it's irrational confidence. Nembhard genuinely thinks he's the best player on that team. TJ McConnell thinks he's the best player on the court whenever he steps on it. Seriously. Nesmith thinks he's the best shooter in basketball. And Toppin, some of the shots he was taking and making, and I say this as a compliment, like, you need some of those irrational confidence guys. I'm not 100% confident Jalen Tyson's an irrational confidence guy. But every time I talk to him in the locker room after a game this season, Jason, whether he played, whether he didn't play, when I talked to him during practice, he was ready for the moment. He's like, when it comes, it comes. Like, I'm ready. I ain't scared. I remember the first time he found out he was starting a game. They didn't tell him until he got to the arena that day and he saw his name on the board. And we did a whole story. We talked about this when he had that game. He's like, all right, nothing changed. Go do my shoot around, go eat my pregame meal, go take a nap. I'm ready. For whatever reason, and I think he's going to take a gigantic leap from rookie to sophomore year and play a pivotal role in the Cavs next year. To me, he has the mental makeup of what you need from a playoff riser. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He went to 3 different schools in 3 years in college, so he's been in a bunch of different environments, asked to play a number of different roles. I think he's big and strong enough to defend on the perimeter. I think he has enough offensive game where teams will have to guard him. It's not going to be an Okoro situation where it's 4-on-5 if you have Tyson in those spots. Jason, this is projecting way ahead because he frankly hasn't even shown us he could do it in the regular season yet. But from a mental makeup standpoint, I do think Jalen Tyson is the type of guy who is a good regular season player, and come playoff time is like, that's a dog I want on my team.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 times.
Well, I agree that I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities this year. There's spots at the bottom of this rotation to be claimed, because I don't think Sam and Ty are both coming back. Maybe neither of them are back, frankly. We haven't really explored that, but there's a world where both of them are gone. But, if one of them's gone and one of them's back, right there's one spot. And then that's all you need is an opportunity. So I do like him. I think that they may have stumbled into something at the bottom of the first round with him. And he'll get his chances this year. And we'll see.
We'll find out. All right, Jason, that's going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavs Show this morning. The first round of the NBA draft tips off tonight. The second round, which is where the Cavs have 2 picks, is tomorrow night. Yes or no answer, Jason. Will the Cavs somehow find their way into the first round of the draft tonight?
No.
I agree as well. All right, that's going to wrap it up. We'll see you on UCSS here in 2.5 hours. For Jason Lloyd, I'm Mikey McNuggets. See you later. Peace.